I'm going to walk through this review with the mindset that most of us have been there standing in the aisle or scrolling online, wondering if a 1500V UPS is really worth the space it takes, the price tag, and whether it will actually keep our gear alive when the power flickers. If you've been on the fence, I want to give you a clear picture of what the CyberPower PR1500RT2U does in a typical home office or small server rack, and where it might fall short. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the problem this unit is trying to solve. In a world where a single outage can corrupt a database, lose hours of unsaved work, or bring down a VoIP phone system, a reliable backup power source is no longer a luxury, it's a baseline expectation. The PR1500RT2U is marketed as a smart UPS with Sinewave output, automatic voltage regulation, and an LCD that you can rotate and tilt. Those sound like the kind of features you'd find on a higher-end model, but the real question is whether they translate into everyday peace of mind or just extra jargon. Who will actually benefit from this UPS? If you run a workstation that powers a high-end graphics card, a NAS with multiple drives, or a small rack of networking gear, you're likely to see the value. The 1500W rating means it can handle a fairly heavy load. Think a desktop PC with dual monitors, a router, a switch, and maybe a UPS-powered external hard drive. I've seen people set up a similar configuration in a 2U rack, and the unit's 8 NEMA 515R outlets give enough flexibility to plug everything in without needing extra power strips. The fact that the UPS can be mounted in a rack or used as a tower adds a bit of future-proofing. You could start on a desk and later slide it into a 19-inch rack as your setup grows. On the flip side, if your power needs are modest, say a laptop, a Wi-Fi router, and a lamp, this is probably overkill. The unit's 2U footprint takes up valuable rack space, and at a price point that competes with smaller models, you might be paying for capacity you'll never use. Also, the Sinewave output is technically smoother for sensitive electronics, but most modern PC power supplies already rectify the incoming AC, so the audible difference is negligible for most users. In short, if you're only protecting a few low-power devices, a 500VA model would likely meet your needs at a lower cost. Now, let's get into how it actually performs when you plug it in. The first thing I noticed during testing was the automatic voltage regulation, AVR. In a neighborhood where the voltage frequently swings between 110V and 130V, the AVR stepped in without any audible alarm and kept the output steady. That means you're not constantly draining the battery during minor sags. The UPS corrects those fluctuations on the fly. For someone with sensitive audio equipment or a server that doesn't like sudden voltage changes, that's a tangible benefit. Battery runtime is the other piece of the puzzle. With a full load about 1500W, the UPS will only give you a few seconds before it shuts down, which is expected. But under a typical office load of around 500W, you get roughly 1012 minutes of backup. That's enough time to save work, gracefully shut down a server, or switch to a generator. The runtime charts in the manual match what I measured, so there's no hidden shortfall. However, the batteries are sealed lead acid, which means they'll need replacement every 3 to 5 years depending on how often you rely on them. The 3-year warranty does include the batteries, which eases the initial cost, but you should factor in that eventual expense if you plan to keep the UPS for a decade. The LCD panel is another smart element. It's a small display that shows input voltage, battery charge, load percentage, and estimated runtime. What sets this model apart is that the panel can rotate and tilt, so you can view it from the front of a rack or from the side of a desk without straining. The interface is straightforward: press a button and you cycle through the screens. It doesn't try to be a full-blown monitoring hub, but the data is there if you need a quick glance. If you prefer to manage everything from your phone, the CyberPower app can pull the same metrics over the network, which is handy for remote monitoring. I found the app responsive, though you do need to configure the network settings on the UPS first, which can be a little fiddly for non-technical users. One practical downside I ran into was the noise level of the cooling fan. When the UPS is under load, the fan spins up and you hear a steady hum. In a quiet office, this can be noticeable, especially if the unit is mounted on a wall rack close to your desk. The fan isn't loud enough to be a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind if you value a silent environment.